With Fallout 76 coming out in November, and also the fact that no one else has been doing videos on this, I'm taking this upon myself to tell you guys about this. And please, share this with anyone you think would like it. Other than that, let's get into it. Now, when you first think of Vault-Tec, you'll probably think of Vault Boy, or the Vaults, or the horrible experiments that they did on the Vault Dwellers, and maybe the Pip-Boy as well. Now, do you ever stop and ask yourself what actually inspired Vault-Tec to begin with? Most people say that Vault Boy was inspired by the Monopoly guy, and that Vault-Tec was just from Cold War hysteria and science fiction. I believe that's wrong though. It would be pretty easy to believe that it came from some board game or some comic book of some sort. But I believe Vault-Tec comes from something much bigger than a board game or science fiction. Something bigger than that. Something more obvious.
Vault-Tec has manufactured UV when the atomic bombs fall.
Civil defense in its entirety is so big that I wouldn't even be able to cover it all in one video. It deserves its own channel itself with its own videos. You can see it here. In early 1941, World War II was raging over in Europe. America wasn't in the war, but they could see tensions rising. So the government started thinking of ways to protect its citizens. Something that would provoke its citizens to help themselves and others out in the time of need. So they decided on civil defense. It's the same thing that the UK had been doing for the past few years, so why can't America do it? So they set it up and started working on it. They soon got the divisions and the system all set up. When it was done being set up in America, it was December 1st, 1941. And 6 days later, World War II came to America. The following day, America would declare war on Japan. Germany would declare war back on America. And almost immediately following December 7th, civil defense kicked straight into action. While some people made victory gardens, joined the military, became a riveter or a plane builder, others were joining the ranks of civil defense. Anywhere and everywhere, in cities and towns alike, across America. There were acting civilians defending the homeland against possible or actual enemy attacks. Now, civil defense continued this way all throughout the war. Thankfully, there weren't that many actual air raids throughout the entire war, because none of the enemies ended up flying over the U.S.
When you hear the sirens blow.
Hey, no, those don't count. But then, in August 1945, the days that changed the world forever, on August 6th and August 9th, we dropped. Yeah, we've heard the exact same thing from hundreds of different peoples and hundreds of documentaries, games, and books alike, this exact same phrase, yeah. No, but all cliches aside, this was a pretty bad event, but it changed civil defense forever. Now they had to deal with atomic bombs and all that radioactive jazz. But after Hiroshima and Nagasaki and World War II being over, there really wasn't that many notable civil defense things that happened. A couple of films and pamphlets came out from civil defense workers that ended up going back to Nagasaki. But other than all of this, there really wasn't anything of note until about 1949. Because in 1949, Russia got their own atomic bomb. Obviously, the world was outraged and shocked about this. Now two major superpowers had nuclear bombs that they could wage war with. Then 1950 rolls along. Around this point, civil defense had mostly disappeared in the eyes of the public. At this time, the public was worried about the conflict in North and South Korea, but the government had been planning for a revival of the civil defense. In December of 1950, the Civil Defense Act was passed. Civil defense had been reborn, but not for the purpose of preparing for war, but preparing for the survival of humanity in the event of a nuclear war. So for the first year in 1951, the first challenge was to find a basic way for civilians to survive the blast waves of atomic bombs. There would be many films throughout the years that would explore this concept, but none would ever be as famous as the infamous Bert the Turtle Duck and Cover. Initially, it was supposed to be a simple film teaching kids how to survive the nuclear blast winds, but its popularity grew over the years, and it grew to the point where it is now the face of the Cold War itself. After this came out, civil defense was officially brought back into the eyes of the public again. People started seeing more of the civil defense as well. As the years progressed, the civil defense would reclaim its quantitative size as it had been during World War II. With civil defense back in the public eye, they got more civilians joining up. Their budget increased too. They were able to get custom Geiger counters and dosimeters to use. Also, the government started letting them use the Nevada test site as a testing ground for their research, researching anything from blast waves to underground explosions.
2 miniature frame houses fight all the earmarks of untidy housekeeping. Newspapers and magazines lying about. On the left, identical to the other, but spick and span. Trash has been thrown away. Tabletops are tidy. The light flash and the heat wave, then the blast tears away part of each roof. The house on the right bursts into flame. The house on the left still shows no exterior flames.
In 1953, a nationwide civil defense entity emerged, a national radio station known as Conrad. In every county and every state, there were 2 Conrad stations, on 640 and 1240 on the AM dial. The plan was, if there was any nuclear threat of any kind, Conrad stations would come on, broadcasting life-saving information, and they would switch between stations so the enemy could not home in on a signal.
Conrad radio stations would return.
As the 50s turned into the 60s, there was more and more civil defense popping up everywhere. But it seems like there was never a real time for them to actually use any of the stuff they had outside of training. That opportunity arose for a week in October of 1962. President Kennedy had announced that Cuba had nuclear missiles armed and ready to fire at the US. This event would go down in history as the Cuban Missile Crisis and also the Week of Civil Defense.
Has established the fact that a series of offensive missile sites is now in preparation on that imprisoned island.
The whole world was in fear and everyone turned to civil defense. Civil defense measures had reached its highest point that it ever had as everyone waited for total atomic annihilation. On that week, almost no one was outside. Everyone was preparing for the worst. But the apocalypse that everyone feared never actually came. From then on, civil defense went downhill. The CD would not be recognized again in public eye until the 1964 Alaskan earthquake. They were the first people on site and the first to set up communication lines.
I'd never seen anything that destructive that close up.
But as the 60s rolled on, there was a new conflict, the Vietnam War. And other than natural disasters and tornadoes and stuff like that, there really wasn't any much need of civil defense anymore. No impending nuclear war. Then, in April of 1979, President Jimmy Carter made the Federal Emergency Management Agency. This almost immediately replaced civil defense in every place in America. So, that's civil defense in our timeline. Now let's talk about civil defense in the Fallout timeline. There really isn't that much in the Fallout lore, but from what there is, we can conclude the following. Civil defense was never disbanded or replaced. They continued to be how they were until the 2050s. They had nothing to do with Project Safe House, and they were a separate entity from Vault-Tec. They constructed the Greenbrier Fallout shelter to run the country in, and there is nothing contradicting this in the Fallout lore currently. As Vault-Tec expanded, creating more vaults across the US, there was little word from the CD. It wouldn't be until late 2077 that we would hear from them again. On October 22nd, 2077, they created the NCRA, aka the National Catastrophe Relief Auxiliary, and they did the exact same thing as the CD did. From the info we have on them, they were based mostly in Washington, D.C. I'll create a separate video for the NCRA in the near future. Well, that is about all for now. Thanks for watching. It took me a while to put this all together. If you're interested in more civil defense stuff, then you should check out my side channel, All Civil Defense, which you can see here and watch the trailer here. Currently I have no content on it other than the trailer, but I'm planning to actually have some by at least September. But other than that, thanks for watching. And all the credits are in the description down below.